Welcome to the Danny Clinkscale Reasonably Irreverent podcast. Insightful and witty commentary, probing interviews, and detours from the beaten path.
Welcome to Arts and Lifestyle Wednesday, presented by Cinematic Visions, and it's time for Danny and Tim's Music Scene, something that we've looked forward to for upwards of 2 years, I think more than 2 years. Tim Finn's regular appearance on the Reasonably Irreverent podcast is right about from the very start, and it's a pleasure to have it still rolling along. And hell, we're almost up to about a year now where we haven't been able to really talk about live music and some of the shows that Tim recommends and goes and sees and reviews at his work at 90.9 The Bridge and also in Kansas City Magazine, and of course for years his great work at the Kansas City Star. And every time we go into it, we kind of think, well, what are we going to talk about this time around? Well, we always manage to find incredible things to talk about, from way back in the day to hoping that we have some days at the music venues coming right up this particular year. We'll vary all over the lot, as we usually do, from presidential music enthusiasts to guys who, unfortunately, guys and ladies who passed away in this past year that create a launching point for talking about their music, and some books and documentaries that we're consuming here in the new year as well. There's always a whole lot to visit with Tim and get some memories and get some recommendations and just generally embrace music. And here we go again on Danny and Tim's Music Scene coming up. Cinematic Visions has been an affordable solution for professional media production in Kansas City since 2003, offering award-winning video production and creation, as well as a wide array of digital and social media management services. From planning, scripting, filming, editing, and post-production to delivering your product to a watching world, Cinematic Visions will provide professional and affordable services for you and your business with the necessary return on investment to make it all worthwhile. Cinematic Visions' goal is to unlock the power of storytelling through video and a strong online presence for your company. Beyond the numbers, they want to inspire and evoke your clients to feel and act. Let my friends at Cinematic Visions embed your brand where it belongs, in your customers' minds. You can find them online at cinematicvisions.com or with a quick phone call at 816-600-6300. It's time now to get some great assistance on healthcare with Chad Beisel from NoNonsenseHealthcareNinja.com. And Chad, even your business's name would indicate that you have a real aggressive way and an important way to go after some health insurance for your clients.
What I've found out in the industry is just a lot of people are really confused. They don't know what plans are good, what their plans offer, how they cover. And so I've just taken the approach of being really educated on what options are available to clients and showing them all the options that are available and making sure they understand them so they can pick and choose what options are good for them.
And one thing that's really important, of course, is access to doctors and hospitals.
Absolutely. That's become a big issue for a lot of people. Some of the plans out there are going to restrict those clients to where they can and cannot go. So if you live just outside the Kansas City metro, some of the counties outside, you may not be able to go to some of the hospitals up here in the Kansas City area. So making sure that you have a plan that's got doctors and hospitals and places you want to go is really, really important today.
Learn more by visiting NoNonsenseHealthcareNinja.com and let Chad help you. Firsthand, I have enjoyed the benefits of the CBD products from Canaway. My back feels better and better these days, as a major part of my routine are the pain-relieving salve and the Pure Gold oil. And recently I had the pleasure of a treatment session using the Canaway CBD in conjunction with the Microlight 830 cold laser. The non-invasive treatment session worked wonders, and I could barely tell I was even being touched. TML 830 is the first 3B cold laser to get FDA approval, and in addition, the combination treatment with CBD is patent pending. The new smart laser is the only hands-free cold laser in the world and is used by athletic trainers, chiropractors, MDs, physical therapists, and veterinarians everywhere. You can learn more about all the great benefits from the complete line of Canaway CBD products by contacting my friend Sherry McCants at 515-208-6312. That's 515-208-6312 to get outstanding information about Canaway. Most of us have experienced auto accidents, and it's no fun. And even less fun is trying to work on the insurance aspects afterwards and getting full value after an auto accident. I'm here with David Cowan from WreckExpert.com. And David, you have an unusual and important niche for people after an auto accident.
We have a passion to teach car wreck clients what they deserve. Getting your car repaired only fixes the damage and the paint. Getting paid for your car's loss in value is called diminished value. Chances are you've never heard of this before because most people aren't looking out for you. We help people collect thousands to tens of thousands of dollars for their car's loss in value after the wreck.
And if somebody wants to come to you for that, what's the original assessment cost them?
We offer a free review of any insurance claim to see how we can help.
You can't beat that. Great expertise and assistance in getting full value after an auto accident from David Cowan. Visit recexpert.com and learn more.
If you'd like to join these and other great sponsors and market your business to a growing and engaged audience, contact us at danny@dannyclinkscale.com. Look forward to hearing from you.
Tim, Happy New Year to you, and Happy New Year to all the listeners out there who've made this particular podcast such a great success, and people love it, and I love doing it. And here we go, and maybe we'll have live music at some point on a regular basis here in the not-so-distant future. A couple things have happened, and maybe show where the stall is and where we probably shouldn't be going yet. The T-Mobile Center put out an announcement that they're going to do a big Disney on Ice show and talked about the seating and everything else. And then the city came back and said, well, hey, not so fast. You haven't even checked with us. And I think these are some of the things that we are going to have as challenges as we try to sort of work our way towards opening up. Of course, we're probably going to see another wave because of people gathering at the holidays. But I just think that particular announcement and the blowback from the city kind of gives us an indication that we still have a ways to go.
Well, right, because by all measures, we're still going through the Thanksgiving surge, and we still have back-to-back Christmas and New Year's. So, and if you don't watch the numbers, that's fine, because what can you do about it except take all the precautions and cautions you need and do your part to stay safe, but they're just not good and they're getting worse. So I don't see a light until spring at the earliest, and I don't see big shows happening until, boy, if anything happens before August, I'll be surprised, pleasantly surprised. Let's hope so. But like we've said before, you just can't announce a tour and start it a week later.
Right.
Arrangements have to be made, and who wants to start arranging things now with any sense of confidence that they're going to happen? So let's wait and see. I know money for venues is included in the aid package. When that starts coming in, it's going to matter, because this is going to be a really, really rough time if some of these places don't get money, if can't stay afloat. So it's a nervous time. When it happens, I'll believe it. I'm not going to expect anything until, tickets are printed and, we know for sure that there's going to be live music. I'm hoping for Starlight because it's an outdoor venue.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they can say, okay, you can put 3,000, 4,000 people into it, half full. But, we'll see.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll see. And we still have not seen sports venues increase, or in fact, some of them have gone backwards. And we've seen in England where there's been a big surge, and that has seen things go backwards. So at least we are starting to roll out the vaccine, but obviously that's just in its infancy. So we can always hope for the best.
And the news on that isn't good either, because the rollout has been much slower than they were hoping for. So people are just deciding not to take it. So there's a lot to go through between now and the next big show.
Yeah, absolutely. But we have things but I thought that there was a funny moment Monday. I was listening to WHB, and Stephen St. John was talking about his New Year's Eve, and what he said was that he was watching one of the network countdown shows, which obviously used to be kind of a staple. I don't know as many people watched it, or maybe more people watched it because they didn't go out or whatever. But anyway, he said he spent much of the evening with his daughters, who are much younger, obviously, and younger ladies. I think they're maybe entering their teens, but and he would just sit there and he'd say, "Who's that?" And then they'd explain who the person was who was on the screen. And I think we've sort of gotten to that point where many years ago there used to be familiar big artists to us, and now they're familiar big artists to other people. And there's so many across the board that New Year's Eve. I can't imagine that you maybe hunkered down to watch the ball drop on New Year's Eve, did you?
Did not watch a bunch of movies, including a bunch of shorts, which were all really good. But like the last couple of years when the musical guests on late night TV, Stephen Colbert or Kimmel or Saturday Night Live, more than half the time I don't know who they are. Like, who is that? Like, and why are they on Saturday Night Live? It's a big forum, but just because they're huge now, and I'm just I'm not as fluent in contemporary music as I used to be.
Right. There's no question about that. And I think that, I think it's sort of, gone, instead of things being mainstream, I guess, maybe there's still obviously some of that, but that's always been driven by younger people anyway. But I think people now are more in an a la carte type of way of sort of going about consuming their music or trying to find their version of new music. And, creating stars is not a broad-based thing except for a very few exceptions. And those seem to be like sort of like little zephyrs that come and go extremely fast.
It seems like it's a lot more fleeting than it used to be. They come out of nowhere and then go away quicker than you know it, and or they just become passé really fast. So, yeah, if you're not paying strict attention, something can come and go, pass over the horizon, and you completely miss it. And then all of a sudden they're being talked about in the past tense, and you're like, I don't even remember when they were here. So, yeah, it's more like that than ever.
As we change presidencies, we think during the next couple of weeks, you dove into a CNN special about Jimmy Carter, and it has a music tone to it because he was such an avid devotee of music and used the White House as a platform for bringing people in, and it sounds like a real interesting special that people could seek out.
It was. I think you probably find it again. It aired last night, and I came in sort of not in the middle, but after the first third or so. And they were discussing how important he was, how familiar he was with the Allman Brothers. Of course, they're from Georgia, like President Carter, and how he got embroiled in the whole drug episode and the drug testimony that Greg Allman was involved in that really kind of broke the band's back, and how Carter became a means of, he supported Greg Allman through it all, even though pretty much everybody else felt betrayed. But looking back, people in the band are like, well, that's just who Jimmy Carter was. He was loyal. He was not going to let the politics of friendship or fame, anything, get in the way of his loyalty to his friends, and he remained friendly with the entire band even after this really seismic split, and really people went to prison. And Greg Allman testified against some of them to save his own butt. So, but then it went into his presidency, and they had footage of this jazz concert with like Dizzy Gillespie and Ron Carter playing there, and Charles Mingus was there in a wheelchair because he was, he was, I guess, somewhat of an invalid back then. He was older. And Carter was a really serious jazz fan. And they have photos of him with, Johnny Cash and Dolly Parton, Luciano Pavarotti, and just this wide berth of musicians. And someone was telling a story one day. Crosby, Stills, and Nash just showed up, and they're like, "Hey, can President Carter come out and play?" And they're like, "Oh, he's kind of busy being president right now, but come on in. We'll see what we can do." And he eventually emerged to take a picture with them and say hi. But he was just considered such a friend of the whole rock music scene and industry. And there's a picture of Willie Nelson there in crutches, and Willie's like, "Oh yeah, I remember that. I was on crutches because I just gotten freed from jail from someplace in the Caribbean, and I was so happy I jumped off a porch and twisted my ankle." And, and there he is in the White House with Emmylou Harris, President Carter. And but the stories were just fascinating. And yeah, it's interesting because I know Bill Clinton was somewhat of a music guy, but not like Carter was. He was almost like a historian too. It was really refreshing to see, because he was unfortunately, I don't think anybody could have been a good president. The 4 years he was president, there was so much turmoil. It was just kind of like, I was thinking about it last night, like that would like trying to be the quarterback during the Scott Pioli, Todd Haley regime of the Chiefs. Nothing was going to go right. Sorry, I don't care who you are. it was just destined to fail. So he's one of my favorite living people too, and will always be my favorite president.
And I think that, that without even being political, I think you could say that he probably had maybe the greatest post president, effect on, he's lived an incredibly long time. He didn't just fade away. He just didn't go play golf. I mean, he has made his life's work using the platform of once being president to do an unbelievably remarkable group of things.
Oh, right. An entire life dedicated to benevolence and charity and helping others. I mean, Habitat for Humanity, that's enough of a legacy, and he's done so much more. And it's so gracious. Like, there's a video of him. He was flying somewhere. It was within the last 2 or 3 years, and he just walked through the cabin and shook hands with people, and people stood up and applauded. Because he's a living saint.
Absolutely the case, no doubt about that. And we kind of need a different time like that, and certainly we've seen so many things that are tumultuous. Another thing you've been doing, which is kind of sounds like a lot of fun. We get to. I know that I don't fly. I haven't flown nearly as much, of course, none basically in the last year. That was when I used to read books all the time when I would travel for work, especially. That's the only time I really had to, and I used to look forward to using that time for that. You're getting into a book that sounds like it's a lot of fun that has music ties as well.
Yeah, and it's a book you can read piecemeal. It's not a novel. There's not necessarily a plot, so you can read a chapter or two at a time, put it down, and come back and pick it up. And it's called Yeah, 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 the story of pop music from Bill Haley to Beyonce. And it's been around for a little while because I got it. It came through the mail when I was at the Star. And it's written by a guy called Bob Stanley, and he's been a record label owner, a DJ. He's a kind of a writer and a music historian, but he was also founder of the band Saint Etienne, which was a trio from out of Britain. The lead singer, Sarah Cracknell, was like really, really great sort of British chanteuse. And this book was published in 2014. But so he's got some authority behind him. He's been in part of the industry, and he's a student of music. And I'm about 100 pages in. It's a really easy breezy read. He makes some points that enlighten me and also reminds me of certain events. And he starts with Bill Haley and just saying that was sort of, for him, from his perspective, that was the Big Bang in rock and roll. And there was stuff before him, absolutely, that happened. Obviously, you go into the black music and gospel and all that, the blues, it's all pertinent and also the foundation. But Bill Haley was the moment when it kind of exploded into mainstream and pop culture. And it also goes into how Bill Haley's career was kind of sabotaged by his own appearance because he certainly wasn't Elvis. And when people showed up to see him live, they were like, wait, that guy looks like my uncle. Like, what is that?
That's not cool.
Not at all. Because Elvis would come along and kind of invent teenage culture, and people like Bill Haley were not the kind of people the teenagers wanted to see. But I recommend it. It's long, but it's like I said, short little episodes and servings, and it's just sort of reminded me and replenished my whole sense of music history, especially stuff that happened before I was born.
Yeah, I don't know if I mentioned it on this podcast. I think I wrote about it, and maybe I did. I don't know. But, when you're getting reminded of things is just such a cool thing. And I did talk about this in a blog I wrote called, about listing some favorite things at the end of the year. It was more therapeutic for 2020 than anything else. And the one song that recently did it for me or fell into the category of something I hadn't heard in ages was Dreams I'll Never See by Molly Hatchet. And I don't think I had heard this, and it wasn't really they had a couple of, relatively big hits back in the late 70s, but this was more of an album track, and it's a great song, but, I don't think I literally had heard the song since it came out, and just having moments like that where you hear something and you go, Wow, that was cool. That was a cool song. And then you look it up, and then maybe you go down an internet rabbit hole. That kind of sounds like what this book can provide for people too.
Yeah, sure. And I mean, we're both a big fan of the Access Channel, and just this morning I watched one of their very brief, history of a certain band. And it was Jethro Tull, and I was reminded of when they came out because I was still junior high school, and just how odd duck they were, and how weird everyone thought they were. But then finally starting to get their music, in high school, and Thick as a Brick, and Aqualung and all that stuff, and this thing put into perspective what Ian Anderson was trying to do, and how there was absolutely no one like them before that, nor after that, because who's going to try to mimic or copy what they do? I mean, one of the more infamous moments was when they won a Grammy for the best hard rock band or something.
Right.
And he said, well, we are known to play our mandolins loud every now and then. So,
yeah, mandolin and flute doesn't really sound, sound like it fits into the genre in any way, shape, or form. Although their music did have some, heavy beats to it, for sure, no doubt about that.
It had an edge for sure. But yeah, that was just another instant of like going back, and because I'd interviewed him a couple times. What a fabulously smart, friendly, intelligent person he is. Knows about everything, but and I've only seen him live, but this made me remember what it was like to hear that on the radio. I'm like, is that a flute? Like, what's going on here? But are these guys serious? But yeah, they were. And the only thing they didn't mention was the live album they put out in '78 called "Bursting Out," which is great. If you can find it, buy it. It's a really one of my favorite live records.
Well, Thick as the Brick is the one that's just one big song, basically, or suite, or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, so as they pointed out in this, he put out Aqualung, and the critics were like, oh, a concept record, how about that? And he's like, no, that wasn't a concept record. I'll give you one. Here it is, Thick as a Brick. And so it's sort of mocking the concept of a concept record. He was just so smart and so funny. Like they pointed out, there's a lot of Monty Python in their spirit, like because they're sort of making fun of what they're doing, but taking it seriously at the same time.
And that reminds me that just the other night, you mentioned on New Year's Eve, we just watched an old Thin Man movie that was set on New Year's Eve. That's why we did that. But then a couple nights ago, I hadn't seen it in a long time, and it definitely held up and was funny. And we watched This Is Spinal Tap, and that is a hysterically funny movie. That's for sure, about a fictional band, and I think many people have seen it. But if they haven't, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah. It's I think, it's kind of going back to what we were saying about not being in touch with what's going on contemporarily. It's like I spend most of my time listening to the records I grew up with and the music that I already own and love. And even on Spotify, I looked at my Spotify end of the year list. It's like, oh, this is all old stuff. Really, it was because I like it. It means something to me, and it reminds me of, my discoveries, my years of finding stuff and feeling awakened by it.
But that's what's great about when we cross our fingers, return to clubs and concerts and venues and things where you can go and discover something new and broaden. It's much easier to broaden your horizons when somebody says, "Hey, this is a cool show coming up," like you do when you're when you're doing it on In Kansas City Magazine. This is a cool show. Maybe I'll sample it, and then you have something new in your musical repertoire. That's not going to happen that much if you're seeking out music just driving down the road in your car or whatever. I mean, it's far more difficult when somebody says this band is cool. They're going to be there, and then maybe you go.
Well, there's nothing like the live connection, and as much as I'm thankful for everyone who's streaming it and watching live shows on YouTube. My wife and I watched The Cure from 1990 on YouTube 2 nights ago, and that was fun. But all we talked about was when we saw them at Starlight like 5 years ago and how great that was. So, yeah, and you can definitely make that connection quicker with a newer band or a band you haven't heard if it's live and you're around people. And but yeah, that's the component that I think we all yearn for, is just the live experience with a new band.
Absolutely the case. We'll talk a little bit more with Tim coming up as we roll into the new year. A new year we hope brings us some music by this late summertime. I'll tell you what, Tim, as to close out this first part, as crazy as people went last year when we weren't even ready to, in any way, shape, or form, get out, if things are pretty good by, say, August, I can't even imagine what America's going to be like with people wanting to get out and do stuff. But we'll talk more with Tim coming up straight ahead right here on Danny and Tim's Music Scene. It's part of Arts and Lifestyle Wednesday, brought to you by Cinematic Visions.
More of Danny's Reasonably Irreverent podcast after this.
I'm here with Joe Spiker, owner of Easton Roofing, and boy, we had to negotiate a million things in 2020, but Easton Roofing navigated them all. As 2021 rolls out, what should we expect this coming storm season?
Well, Danny, it'll be the same thing as it is every year. The storms come, and you've got the guys out knocking on doors, offering quote-unquote free inspections. Be wary as a homeowner. If somebody's knocking on your door, they probably need the work, and if they need the work that bad, they may be willing to do something untoward to get it. So if somebody knocks on your door, says they want to give you a free inspection, just tell them have a great day and give us a call. We'll come out for free and give you a good, honest opinion as to whether or not you need to do anything at all with your roof.
And what's the best way to get in touch with Easton Roofing?
You can always find us online at eastonroofing.com or give us a call at 913-257-5426.
Easton Roofing. Integrity matters. It's time to visit once again with Dr. Brad Woodle of Advanced Sports and Family Chiropractic and Acupuncture. And Dr. Brad, your group has reached a significant milestone in receiving a prestigious award.
Danny, we've been honored for the 10th year in a row to receive the 5-Star Service Award from Integrity Doctors. And what this means is that all of our offices throughout Kansas City have made sure to give people excellent chiropractic and acupuncture care, be on time, and do a very complete and thorough job, and have great responses back from patients.
I know firsthand because I was just treated, for instance, today by you. You have a wide range of fantastic services.
Absolutely. Chiropractic, acupuncture, physiotherapies, rehab, anything that you need to keep you well in bones, muscles, joints, and nerves.
And I can't say how much it's benefited me in the time I've coming here. Upwards of 2 years, my back has improved 100%. And you can have that same kind of treatment too. For more information and your chance for a healthier way of life, visit asfca.com/Danny today.
Hi, everybody. This is Matt Llewellyn from 23rd Street Brewery in Lawrence. I just want to thank everybody for supporting local restaurants during this time of uncertainty. 23rd Street Brewery is now open until this pandemic is over. And right now, more than anything, local restaurants need your help and support. Come on out and see us. 23rd Street Brewery is open now from 11:30 till 9 o'clock for dine-in and carry-out. Whatever we can do to help you out, maybe with your catering needs, too. I appreciate all the support, and thank you for continuing to shop local.
I'm here with Tim Emerson, the owner of Emerson & Company. And Tim, give us an idea of the range of services that you provide from Emerson & Company.
At Emerson & Company, we do credit card processing, payroll services. We do bookkeeping, merchant accounts like point-of-sale systems.
What would you say differentiates you from other companies in the field, and what makes you special?
I think what makes us unique is that we're a small local business making regional decisions on companies. We create a profile for the business and then put it out to our different vendors in a very competitive environment and tailor those needs to the specific business, which usually ends up in a great fit or great result for the company.
And, of course, the idea is to save money, right?
Save money, and actually sometimes I'm surprised where actually a solution that may cost a little bit more ultimately does save money, but we're not conditioned to think like that sometimes.
Emerson & Company. Check them out at emerson-co.com or call them at 816-360-9092. If you'd like to join these and other great sponsors and market your business to a growing and engaged audience, contact us at danny@dannyclinkscale.com. Look forward to hearing from you. Back with Tim, and one thing that happens at the end of the year is that you look back on a lot of the performers we lost, and of course we've talked a lot about those people through the course of the year, and Charlie Pride and Neil Peart, the drummer for the great drummer, and maybe I'll note a couple that we maybe haven't talked about here in a minute from previous, but a couple of recent people passed away. And just yesterday, Jerry Marsden from Jerry and the Pacemakers, who put out some hits. And you mentioned Bill Haley, and Jerry Marsden was a pretty goofy-looking guy, and I think he realized rather quickly that he made some hits, they get out there. They did some TV shows, but he's kind of a buck-toothed goofball, and he turned into a music producer. And sometimes people somewhat realize maybe their limitations, and, hey, I've done that. I'm really not cut out to be a pop star, and I'll move on. But they did some very memorable songs, and one still resonates because their version of You'll Never Walk Alone is Liverpool, the soccer team. It's their theme song at their
right.
And Ferry Across the Mersey. He wrote some
Don't
really
Let the Sun Catch You Crying.
Yeah, those are some really, really fun songs. So he passes away at yesterday in his mid-70s. But somebody who's really considered a very substantial part of music history died a couple of weeks ago. His name is Tony Rice, and he was a famous bluegrass guitarist. And I didn't know much about him, but the list of guitarists who just came pouring out and giving him accolades about his fantastic playing and his impact on the music scene was, just staggering. And from Ricky Skaggs, just going on and on and on, and people like that, really amazing.
Bela Fleck and the Grateful Dead. Yeah, I think he was one of those guys that maybe was, escaped the attention of the average music fan, even the average bluegrass fan, but was just a giant behind the scenes or in the studio or on stage. Someone who, I bet a lot of people didn't know who he was. I mean, I knew of him, but I didn't know as much about him as I should have, because I'd heard his name a bunch. His name would come up. But yeah, and he was only 69. Apparently, it was just kind of drop dead. As I say, he was making coffee or something.
Right. Yeah, making coffee in his kitchen. That was what they announced.
But yeah, so that's for what he does. I mean, we know guys live well beyond that. Into their mid 80s, and they're still making music. So it's sad, and it was the more I read about him and learn about him, the more I realize what a loss it was, and what a profound effect he had on the music and a lot of other really highly respected and better known musicians.
Just going to talk about a couple people maybe we haven't touched on, or a band or so we haven't touched on from people who passed away. In the category of somebody who I probably thought had been long dead was Little Richard, who died this past year.
Right.
What an completely unique and, influential in some ways, but in other ways just campy, unbelievably big star that came from the days of rock and roll. And just the fact that he was able to be Little Richard and become famous in that era is pretty amazing.
Right. Well, if you consider where the civil rights was back when he came out, and who he was and how he presented himself, yes, it was only because he was a force of nature. He was a personality that his personality almost outshone his musicianship and who he was as a performer and a musician and a songwriter, and just everything he did. I mean, when I think of like people with charisma and magnetism, I immediately think of Prince, but then I think, without Little Richard, there's probably no Prince, because Little Richard was that thing. And I saw him. It must have been one of his final shows ever. I haven't really explored this. I think he did some touring after, but he played at the Voodoo Lounge and needed help getting to the piano. He blamed it on sciatica, which it might have been, or it may have just been the infirmaries of getting old. And like Prince, he was pretty acrobatic and energetic in his youth, right? So, nonetheless, once he sat down, he could talk freely, and he played the piano. And I don't remember what his voice was like, because who cares? It was a Little Richard. And he probably played for 60, 65 minutes, a little short, but forgive that, because just to be in his room and his presence, you could feel it. And it was not long after that he stopped touring. He just couldn't manage it anymore. But yeah, so however old he was back then, it was probably 2015 or so. It was evidence, who he was and who he had been, and I think his influence is kind of immeasurable. He's one of those. I would put him on Mount Rushmore.
Right.
Little Richard and James Brown. Mm-hmm. I would start there.
Right. Absolutely. Well, in a certainly far less substantial area, I was just flipping through these lists, and I came upon Steve Priest, who was the bass player and the singer for the band The Sweet, who talk about some guilty pleasures. They put out some really cool bubblegum. That's unfair. It's probably a little bit heavier than that, but Little Willie and Barroom Blitz and some really kind of stupid fun songs from back in the day.
Well, when I was in high school, Barroom Blitz was the anthem that would blow the roof off a bar. Because when I was in school, the drinking age was 18, so high school kids were in bars back then.
Right.
As wrong as that is, but that was the song that would just stop the place. So they had a place, absolutely. It was short, but it was I'm not going to say sweet because that would be too icky of a pun. But yeah, it was a band that you remember when they were big.
I can just see young people in a bar because there's a refrain where they just scream "yeah, yeah, yeah," which makes a reference to the and I can't imagine the people not all just screaming it in unison in the middle of a song. One more for me. I think that maybe if they had a list of 100 top one-hit wonders, I would say that Mississippi Queen by Mountain had to be certainly on the Mount Rushmore of that, and Leslie West, who was the guitarist who played the iconic riff in that, he died this year. But I think kind of everybody knows that song, and I think they actually can say, "Oh, that's Mountain," and maybe even that's Leslie West, and that was it. I mean, that's all they did.
Right. But and I don't. Most of the bands that we call one-hit wonders have this sort of novel cachet about them.
Right.
But Mountain doesn't. I mean, that it was kind of a testimony to radio and listeners and like rock fans that song became as popular as it did, because it's a great song. It's one of the best rock songs ever, and that riff is it's timeless. So that's one instance where the right place and the right time hit the right band, because they were formidable, and they weren't about to write 3-minute pop songs or anything just to get on the radio, but that one deserved it, and it got it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we hope we're in the right place and the right time more and more as this year goes along. Tim, always a pleasure, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Yep, great. Thanks, Danny.
We hope you enjoyed the latest Danny Klink Scale Reasonably Irreverent podcast. Come back soon for something fresh and new. This podcast was made possible by our great sponsors like
NoNonsenseHealthcareNinja.com, specializing in expert healthcare guidance and assistance for you.